This might not have a specifically romantic element, but if Jinchi is thinking of Maomao and wondering how he can convince her to accept his proposal, he might very well speak in terms of winning someone over. How so, sir? You have spoken to so many people since we arrived here that I do not know whom you might be referring to. It was true. A great many women had spoken to Jinchi since his arrival in the western capital. How many, one wouldn't wish to say. Jinchi said, "You don't have to finish that thought." Then he was asked, "What brings this on, Master Jinchi? Did something happen with you?" Jinchi said, "No. It's simply that there's someone I would very much like to triumph over." He had to struggle to get the words out. He was not quite smooth enough to handle so many women at once. He wanted to avoid making Basin think too highly of his abilities. He continued, "I had thought I knew how to play this game. This person can be rather elegant, but I am supposed to be the superior one. Perhaps I trusted that too much. That illusion was thoroughly shattered tonight, and it has left me feeling quite pathetic." Basin was looking at him with a hint of amazement. "This person must be quite skilled, sir, to make you say that." Yes, at least Basin didn't seem to realize whom Jinchi was talking about. "Thankfully, we fought over something minor," he said. "I started the fight and I lost it." The second part of the conversation begins with how so, sir, and focuses on the word 8. This is a well-known difficulty for translators. It has a very large number of possible synonyms in English, but most of them do not sound quite right. The concept itself is fairly simple. It means another party, someone else involved in a situation. Unfortunately for translators, terms like another party or the other party are mostly found in legal writing. They are rarely helpful when translating fiction. So we now consider the wealth of synonyms for 8. 8 can be translated in many ways, including opponent, partner, buddy, the other person, the other guy, or the other player. The meaning depends on the context. Perhaps most importantly for this discussion, 8 can also refer to a romantic partner. When Jinchi says there's an 8 I would very much like to triumph over, he clearly means someone he wants to vanquish in the game of love. Basin, however, reasonably takes the term to mean an opponent or perhaps even a romantic rival. This impression is fostered in part by Jinchi's use of aggressive language to describe the relationship. In this case, the solution turned out to be less is more. Because Jinchi speaks of triumphing, the notion of an opposing person or force was already implied. Instead of choosing a translation for 8 that made the meaning completely clear like opponent, we decided to use someone I wish to triumph over. We let the verb do most of the work. Throughout the rest of the passage, we wrote in a way that avoided needing any pronouns, such as this person. I am supposed to be the superior one, she thought, so there wouldn't be anything to tip Basin off that Jinchi might not have a male partner in mind. Basin looked puzzled for a second, but then he said, as if it all made sense to him. Are you lost, sir? So that is what you mean. A sparring partner, sir. What a bore they must be. He could be perceptive at the most surprising moments. Perhaps it would sound insulting to suggest Jinchi was startled to realize Basin even knew what it really meant to be rivals in love. But that Rikusen wasn't that his name. He might seem like just another handsome face, but he shouldn't be underestimated. He was a direct subordinate of the strategist Lacan, but he wasn't the one Jinchi was worried about. The conversation isn't over yet. The wordplay becomes even more complex in a third segment, which leaves the reader laughing with delight and the translation team searching for a solution. In the final phase of the talk, starting with so that's what you mean, the word at issue is Seiya 8. Seiya 8 literally means a bumping of scabbards. The term originally came from a time when two samurai might argue because the ends of their swords, scabbards, bumped against each other. From this background, the word came to mean an argument over something trivial. We understand that Basin comes up with the expression because Jinchi has just mentioned a fight over something minor. However, nowadays the main meaning of Seiya 8 is actually a romantic rival. This is the sense in which Jinchi seems to take it. He is impressed that Basin even knows the meaning of the word, but it so happens they each have a different meaning in mind. To translate Seiya 8 as something like romantic rival in Basin's line would be incorrect. That is not what he means by it, and it would undermine the confusion and the humor of the moment. Partly by association with the martial language of the immediately preceding part of the conversation, they went with a sparring partner. The expression could refer to anything from a literal partner, for engaging in physical combat practice, to a lover with whom you have a tiff. This sustained series of misunderstandings leads to the two men's differing ideas of what Basin is offering when he suggests he might be able to help Jinchi. The entire scene leads to and rewards the listener with a comedic moment. A successful translation must establish how Jinchi and Basin talk past each other, just as they do in the original. As this discussion shows, there is often a way to create an equivalent experience in the target language through careful consideration of synonyms. It is also necessary to pay attention to the larger flow of the text. Speaking of the larger flow, because this is the Apothecary Diaries, the author doesn't want to leave this string of jokes at the end of the prologue. Later, when Basin and Maomao meet in Chapter 1, Basin comments that Jinchi has been acting strangely. He asks if Maomao is aware of any Xiaobu go-to he has been involved in. This word literally means competition, and it is often synonymous with gambling. However, some Japanese-to-Japanese dictionaries define it as events involving winning and losing. It seemed likely to us that his line is a reference to the prologue. He is wondering if Maomao knows anything about this mysterious opponent with whom Jinchi is locked in battle, according to Basin's understanding. Our final translation for this line, "Have you heard about him? I don't know," being under pressure from anybody, takes a somewhat broad approach to the pun. We thought this gave the widest latitude for interpretation. Just so we don't leave you with the impression that every pun in JE translation is a riddle box that takes endless thought and discussion to unpack, let me highlight a joke that occurs in Chapter 2. When the uncle of the floating bride wades into the lake and grabs a fish, he says this. He exclaims, "Gorgeous, I love it. I wish this was snapper, but I won't carp about it." In the Japanese version, the line is meditai meditai. What a happy occasion, what a joyous occasion. It is a real shame this isn't red snapper. That is a dad joke level pun. It plays the Japanese word for red snapper off the last couple syllables of meditai. Joyous is an expression of approval and happiness. In English, to carp about something means to complain about it, and there are carp in the lake. This was a joke that practically wrote itself. Correspondences that close are few and far between, but they do exist. You accept them with a grateful heart when you get them. With these examples from both ends of the difficulty scale, you can see that translating humor, even language-based humor, can be difficult, but is by no means impossible. It is true that when you are working with a tight deadline and struggling with a passage like this, you might exclaim, "Really, author-san? Must you?" However, when you finally find an effective solution to this kind of puzzle, it is one of the true joys of translation. Ideally, you can determine something functional. If you are thoughtful, careful, and a little bit lucky, you might even produce something elegant enough to make a target language reader laugh, just like a reader of the original. Those sublime moments are what translators aspire to. This happens when a reader who does not speak the original language is able to enjoy what the author is doing in a way comparable to a reader of the source text. These are the moments that foster real pleasure and real understanding. We hope you enjoyed this survey of one of the most frustrating and most rewarding elements of translation. Thanks for joining us, have fun and read widely. We will see you in the next volume. Sign up for our mailing list at J Novel Club to hear about new releases. You can also read the latest chapters like Volume 7 of this series by becoming a J Novel Club member. The Apothecary Diaries Volume 6 is by Natsu Hyuga. The illustrations are by Taoko Shino. Kevin Steinbach translated this book and Sasha McGlynn edited it. This book is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are the product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual events, locales, or persons, living or dead, is coincidental. Kyusuri no Hitaragoto, copyright Natsu Hyuga 2016. All rights reserved. Originally published in Japan by Shufunatomo Infos Company Limited. Through Shufunatomo Company Limited. This English edition is published by arrangement with Shufunatomo Company Limited, Tokyo. English translation copyright 2022, J Novel Club LLC. All rights reserved. In accordance with the U.S. Copyright Act of 1976, Scanning, uploading and electronically sharing any part of this book without the publisher's permission is unlawful piracy and theft of the author's intellectual property. J Novel Club LLC. J Novel Club. The publisher is not responsible for websites or their content that are not owned by the publisher. This is the ebook edition 10, published in October 2022. It is a premium ebook.